Welcome to the Freedom Blueprint Show, a podcast about creating the lifestyle you want through your small business. Drawing on their experiences starting and running multi-million-dollar small businesses, three friends, Jon, Ryan, and Gabe, discuss how to have a business, but more importantly, a lifestyle you love.
Welcome to the very first Freedom Blueprint Show. I've got Jon Carcone, Gabe Garcia, and myself, Ryan Robson. Three really good friends who started out as nobodies and are trying to become somebody still. So here we are, guys. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So all three of us are in different locations. We're not doing this because of what's going on in the world right now. We're just three buddies that met at a mastermind group and really had some alignment in our thoughts and our goals. I vacation with you guys. I've hung out with you guys. We've spent really good time with our families, and I just love being around you guys. I love the energy you guys bring. And really, I love your ability for me in my own life to kind of slow things down and help me see things from a bigger perspective. So the three of us got together and we said, hey, let's put on a show for everybody else and just talk about what our journey's been like. Talk about all the ways that in tools and tactics and real life things that we put in place to get us to the point where we're living the life, our best life, right? And to get you to the point where you can live your best life. So we're excited to be on the show with you guys. I wanted our first show just to have everyone go around the clock here. And Jon, if you wouldn't mind starting and just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story. We want to know, and I'm going to share some things you two probably don't know about me, but how you got here, how you got to this mindset that you have today, and what your life story is.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. Appreciate the intro. And, this is going to be a learning experience for us. It's our first show, so should be interesting and, should be fun. So, my background is, I come from a corporate background pretty much. So after school, got a normal job working for a management consulting company in Washington, D.C. It was a sales job. I started as somebody that was scheduling appointments for the outside salespeople. It was basically like a glorified cold caller, essentially, is what I started as. And I scheduled appointments for the guy that would go out and actually meet with the executive, basically. I did that for a year. Then I became the sales executive that was traveling around and doing the selling. Then I did sales management. And I read Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. This was about probably 5 years or so into the time at that company, like around 2009. Every year before that, I had been fortunate enough and had worked hard enough to be able to get promoted into sort of a different job every year. So it was always exciting. I was learning a lot. It felt like it was just this really quick upward progression. And then after about 5 years, I got to sort of mid-level management, sales management in the company. And it was clear that I was not going to continue. I was not going to be the CEO in another 5 years or something. Like, it takes longer the higher you get up into a company. I read 4-Hour Work Week, and that idea of don't have a delayed life plan where you wait to live until you're retired. That really resonated with me. I really did not want to be 50 or 60 and have a lot of freedom and autonomy and flexibility to travel and go do the things I wanted to do. I wanted to do that, as soon as possible. So I started looking into ways that I could have my own business, because it was clear that working for a company was not really going to achieve that. So have my own business. Okay, cool. I want to have my own business. Now what the hell am I going to do? So I looked at stock trading. I looked at rare coins and just whatever you could Google on the internet, for how to start a business. This was around 2009.
Wait, 2009 you said?
Yeah, 2009.
So really, right when the crash was going on?
Yep. Right when it was going on. Yeah, exactly.
In a weird way, it's a good time to start a business, but there's a lot of, depression and sadness in the market. Like, not a lot of people are motivated to start a business that year.
Yeah, it was, fortunately, because I worked for a company, I didn't even really process what was going on externally in the world. Like, I didn't get fired. I knew that it was everything was kind of falling apart, and like a bunch of people in the company got fired. But because I didn't, and I felt pretty secure where I was, like, it didn't really affect me, in a negative way. I knew it was happening, but it wasn't really a factor, for whatever reason.
So
and
killer as far as sales goes?
What's that?
I said, were you a stone cold killer as far as sales goes?
I was good. I'm not a natural salesperson because, as you guys know, I'm not extroverted, really. Like, I'm not really a people person. I'm just like a hustler. I'm like a process guy. I'm an organization guy. So I was like good at sales process, but I wasn't like a super awesome, dynamic in the moment salesman that was going to close the deal. You know what I mean? So I was able to get it done through sheer kind of grit and like hustle basically, and just kind of wear myself down. But yeah, definitely not a natural.
Interesting. That still makes for a good sales guy though. Process people are good salespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but usually not when they don't like people, Gabe.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the process thing is kind of underrated in sales. I mean, in my experience, like people kind of focus on the people who are good and dynamic in the moment who can close, but like the sort of the organization, the systemization, the follow-up, the follow-through, having a process where you're tracking all your contacts and making sure you contact again. So like no lead falls through the cracks. I think you can have a profile of salesperson in certain roles that's successful, you know, because they're good at that. And you can have a profile where they're kind of a menace and they're kind of a maniac and they can't really stay organized and can't stay on top of details, but they're just like a killer in the moment. You know, I think both profiles can work, and it varies based on like what kind of a sales job it is.
Yeah. So what happened next? You're in 2009, you're Googling stuff. Then what happens?
Yeah, Googling stuff. And, you know, so the thing that seemed the most sure way to do my own business was the real estate stuff. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do real estate stuff. You know, I realized that in the stock market, you've got, you know, Princeton, Harvard, people that have like PhDs that you're competing against. And I did not feel that I was up to that challenge. Whereas, you know, you go to a RIA meeting, real estate investors meeting in any city, you see the people who are there making good money. These are not the people that are necessarily blowing your socks off, probably, that you think, well, I could never be like them. So I was like, all right, well, if they can do it, I can probably do it. So I picked real estate and just kind of pursued that path from there on out. So, you know, for me, it was about a 2.5 year process between when I said, yeah, let me do real estate. I'm kind of pushing all my chips in on real estate. I'm not going to chase shiny objects. And when I finally was able to get it going, I tried lease options. I tried all sorts of stuff. And it was when I found a mentor in a lower cost market, the right market in my area, when I found a mentor that I finally was able to start getting going. I started out flipping houses. I started with just one house. My mentor helped me. I put up all the money and I gave him part of the profit. And then I flipped, you know, 2 houses, 3 houses, 5 houses, just kind of worked my way up over time. So that in a nutshell is sort of my story. I'll get into, I'm sure, more about how the transition worked from, you know, working for somebody else to working for myself and getting into real estate. But that's kind of a summary of it.
So I've got the luxury of asking you questions. I'm sure everybody's watching that has like 20 questions they want to ask you. Like, how much money did you have when you got started? How much in savings? Like, how did you make the decision to actually jump out of the boat onto the, I guess, off the dock onto the boat? It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I had $100,000. So I'd say $100,000 by that time. Yeah, good amount of money. And this was in, you know, 2010, 11. And so, you know, in the market I picked, you could buy a single family house all day long for 50, 60 grand. The first house I bought was in cash.
In DC?
What's that?
In DC, you could buy a house for 50, 60 grand at that time?
Yeah. In the area, it's a certain county called Prince George's County. That's kind of in the suburbs of it.
What are those houses today?
So that one I bought for 60, you'd probably need to buy it for about 150 now, I would say. About 3 times as much.
3 times.
So, yeah, so I had $100,000 saved up. So I was very fortunate, you know, and had, you know, success in corporate life to kind of have that. And what was your other question?
Just what was it like to like take that money? Because you're not a risk guy, right? Like you don't like risk. So your type of personality, for those of you listening, if you're similar to Jon, as you guys get to know Jon on the show, there's a lot of people that are like you. You're very risk adverse, right? Like very few personality types like that ever become entrepreneurs by themselves without a business partner.
Yeah, very true. And I think that's why it took me literally from 2009 until end of 2012 to be able to establish the business and then finally go full time in 2012.
So you were flipping while you were working. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So because I had the kind of track record of success that I did, they kind of gave me a lot of flexibility in my schedule. So as long as I was hitting my sales quota, when you're a salesperson, it's almost like you're a business owner, sort of. When I was hitting, if you hit your sales quota, they don't really care what you're doing with your other time. So I was able to hit it, but still have, you know, quarter to half my time that was free. And so for 2.5 years, I was basically working part-time. So the only way that a cautious scaredy cat like me is ever going to do this is when you're jumping to something super safe. So I didn't quit until I was making more, you know, flipping than I was at my core W-2 job, which took about 2.5 years.
That sounds more like you.
Yeah. Yep. And it was like, and it took me probably 3 times as long as somebody like you or Gabe or people that we know that are more risk tolerant and more aggressive would have taken them. So,
but it's interesting because there's a lot of people that probably have that same profile that want to be entrepreneurs. Like I'm sure Omer, my business partner, is probably more like you, but he keeps me in check. I'm like, I'll burn the ships, you know? So I need someone to be like, yo, come in there, buddy, you know? So
totally. Yeah, totally. Well, cool.
Right,
so yeah, I know I went kind of over time on my little background, and yeah, hopefully we can talk more about it in the future. But yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Cool. So my go. So basically, me, I graduated from Full Sail University in, 2009, 2010. It's a school for music business. So I was a rapper in my past life. So I used to smoke a lot of pot, and I used to record music. And that was my dream, my hobby, my everything at the time. And I wanted to be a famous rapper. That's what I wanted to do. I ended up going to school for that. I worked in different music studios, under some even famous producers for some time. And after I graduated from school, it was interesting because I was never a great student. I was a good student, but I never applied myself. But then when I went to Full Sail, like I was pretty much, I was salutatorian because I missed class too much. If not, I would have been valedictorian if it wasn't for my tardiness in class. And after I graduated from school, music industry is rough, man. Like you have to work for free for a long ass time. It's all internship based stuff till you get your foot in the door. And I just saw I was competing with people that would literally want to go take their car and drive to Hollywood and live in their car for months on end just to get a foot in the door. And I'm like, man, like, I love this stuff. I don't love it that much. Like I'm not that passionate about it either. And that was my first time living by myself. So my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, we moved together over there. And that was my first time living on my own. I was, mind you, 22, 23 years old. So like, I knew what I didn't want. And I didn't want to go back to living with my parents and being broke. I was clear about that. So I'm like, honestly, like if I work in the music industry or not, I don't care as long as I'm not broke. And I just took the first job I can get right out of school. I started working at some studio part-time, but that wasn't really going. And I started working some warehouse jobs. And one day, like a cool thought entered my mind and was like, well, you know, you don't have money. So maybe there's something that I don't know about money, and that's the reason why I don't have it. So that thought led me to go, you know what? Me and my wife decided that we just create a daily habit. We went to Barnes & Nobles every single day, get some coffee, and I would just start reading books. And I would go to the business economics section and just get books on money. And that led me to all the classics, you know, what's the one that you should go with King Solomon that you're supposed to tithe 10%, you know, and save 10%, The Richest Man in Babylon, you know, that one, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all that stuff. And it was the Kiyosaki books that really got my mind like wrapped around this thought that money can work for you. And I found myself fighting with the book and resisting a lot of ideas. And I know whenever I resist ideas, there's probably something there for me to grow. And I had a really good friend of mine who was a successful real estate investor that was in my spiritual organization. So I had to reach out to him and ask him like, yo, do you think this is really true? Because I knew he had flipped houses and stuff and they used to buy at auction, and he's still a good friend of mine. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, man, they're doing a seminar. Like, would you mind coming with me to like check it out and like, you know, see if this stuff is like for real? And he went. That's how I got indoctrinated. You know, thankfully I didn't pay for Rich Dad coaching. I'd asked my dad for a loan. I'm like, man, I'm gonna make $1 million. Like I need 40 grand so I can do this program. And he's like, are you effing nuts? He's like, you just graduated from school with 40,000 in debt, and now you're asking me for a $40,000 loan. I'm like, man, I'll pay you back in one deal. Like, trust me. Like he's like, you're out of your mind. He hung up the phone on me. And eventually I just kept going to seminars. I kept putting myself in places to meet the right people. Found a mentor eventually, got started that way. And just like, I don't know, the light switch went on. Like I never grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I'm the only one in my family that's, you know, an entrepreneur. And just the light bulb went on for me when I started reading, and it changed everything. And then from there, I just never looked back, man. I had a job. I had started working at Humana as a health insurance company. That was 2012 or 13. I left. It took me a year to leave, and I left with zero savings. So I was the opposite of John. I was there for a year and a half. The Rich Dad seminar was Thanksgiving was on a Thanksgiving. It was 2012, and then I quit March 2014. So it was like a year and a half. And I had quit. I had a short sale under contract that I was going to make $40K on. And I'm like, yo, this is a year's worth of salary right here. Like, I'm done. I'm leaving. I was already going to get in trouble. I was the guy at work that I was getting reprimanded all the time because I was on my phone. And like John, like, I could get my work done in 4 hours, 5 hours. So the other 3 hours, I brought my list of follow-up calls to make. I would eat lunch on their time versus my lunch break as well. And I would just call while everyone was gossiping at work and talking about the basketball game or the football game or the Kardashians or whatever. I'm just making calls and trying to make it. And eventually I started getting reprimanded by management, and I don't like authority, and I don't like when people reprimand me or tell me what to do. Like, I don't know. It's just a horrible feeling. So I'm like, man, I got to leave here. Like, I know I'm going to make way more money on my own, and being here is just not good for my health. So my mentor gave me his blessing too. He's like, look, I've never told anyone to quit their job before to go into this thing, but he's like, I'm going to tell you to quit your job. And he actually called my wife at the time. He's like, look, I know it's going to be scary for you guys, but you're in good hands. Like, trust in him, believe in him, support him, and let him quit his job. And yeah, I quit. That deal didn't end up closing. It got delayed for like 4 more months. The next few months, I had to get okay with not paying my bills on time and delaying payments so I can make things work and doing all types of creative stuff to get money to come in. But after that happened, you know, the rest is history. You know, we grew our business to 7 figures relatively quick. It took me like a year and a half to do it after that.
So when did Omar get involved? How did that happen?
So I met Omar doing yoga, actually. So he's a yoga instructor, and I had gone to an ashram in Miramar to go practice yoga. My wife had wanted me to go, and I wasn't like really feeling like going. And anyway, I ended up going to please her. And when we went, Omar was there. And he's like, oh, the class is closed because not enough people showed up. But he gave me a card, and he's like, just call us next time for the next class, and I'll let you know if there's people here. And there was, it said like distressed real estate on his card. And I'm like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I wholesale. And then that's how we became good friends. And it took us about a year and a half after from that point that we actually formed our partnership, because we formed our partnership in 2015.
But I think we're going to have a whole show on should you have a partner or not. That'll be a good one. But I've got some more questions for you, but we could save it for one of those shows. It's a great question.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's how I got started. You know, I've been in the business since then. And,
you know, I think there's some huge nuggets there, guys, if you know, listening to that. But one of the nuggets that I took away, one of my big takeaways is, you know how like when you have a friend and they've got certain habits and you find out something about them in the past and you're like, okay, that makes sense. When you said that you would have been valedictorian if you had showed up to class on time, I just could not stop laughing. Even on these episodes, Gabe is always the last one on. So if John and I ever start an episode without him, it's because Gabe's still getting set up in the background. He'll jump in at some point.
I was talking to a good friend of mine that you guys know, Alex, and he was like, dude, if someone like shows up late to a meeting in our company, like even 30 seconds, like it's a huge core value tolerance. And I'm like, really? I'm like, wow. I'm like, thank God you're company. I'm like, we're always late, you know? It's like, but whatever.
No, he makes people sing the national anthem. I tried that with our team, and they all looked at me like I was crazy. They'd rather quit than do that.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let me share a little bit about my background with you guys. You know, I kind of grew up seeing the sides of two coins. My mom was very poor, and I grew up mostly with my mom, and my dad was really rich. And like extremes, like my mom was on one end, my dad was on the other. And I was lucky enough to have a mom that would spoil me. And a lot of times during my life, I knew we didn't have money, but there were other times when I didn't realize my mom was just spending everything she had on me, and I felt like we had money. And I was also lucky enough to have a dad that had a bunch of money that never gave me money. but gave me tons of advice. And that is a huge blessing that I hope to instill in my own children, right? So a few things, takeaways. I got involved in real estate because my mom was a real estate agent growing up. And I was the kid that was out there, as a paper boy and knocking doors, selling magazines. And I just wasn't afraid to get out there and do things because I grew up with my mom as a single mom going into appointments with her. So I just got used to being comfortable with people in sales. And I learned a lot of that from my mom's side of growing up. And I got to give her a lot of credit for that. But I also learned a lot from my dad. I remember sitting at Rubio's Fish Tacos, which was my first job. And I always said, if I became a millionaire, I'd just quit and go work at Rubio's because I just loved it that much. Weird, eh? Like, I love selling people fish tacos. Like, you never tried one? Let me buy you your first taco. Like, I just really enjoyed it. Anyway, so I remember sitting at lunch with my dad at Rubio's. And, all right, Dad, what should I do for work? This is right out of high school. I'm looking at going to college. What should I study? What should I do for work when I grow up? And I wanted to study real estate. And ASU had a real estate department where you can get your real estate license and major in real estate. And he gave me really, really sound advice. And I don't know if this advice was good for you listening, but for me, it was so good. Like, I had this visionary, creative, marketing, sales, just run as fast as I can and dominate the world attitude. And he said, go get a degree in accounting or finance, which is the exact opposite of that personality, right? Like, that's something, John, you should be studying is accounting or finance, right? Like, that's way up your world, diving into numbers all day long, processes and all that. So it was good for me. I ended up doing accounting and fell in love with the numbers. And I went and worked for one of the big four accounting firms, Deloitte & Touche, for about 3 years, did the whole CPA thing. And I found myself, you guys really need to give a hug. If everyone ever says they're an auditor, just give them a big hug and hey, life's going to be okay. Because their working conditions, they would put us in these back rooms with no windows. We'd have a round table about the size of that with 3 people sitting around it, each with a laptop and a stack of papers. And you literally work from 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night in that condition, in the storage room of somebody's office. I mean, it was just horrible work conditions. But I did that for 3 years at Deloitte, and I fell in love with spreadsheets. And that's one of the best skills that I carry today is my love for spreadsheets. But also, I had to learn how, when you audit, you have to learn how to understand and learn businesses really fast and kind of assess risk as fast as you can. And the whole point of an auditor is to explain why they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, right? The risk side of it. So I did that. And then I was auditing this guy named Levine. And Mr. Levine here in town is a billionaire. He's a part owner in the Angels. He used to be partners with Artie Moreno. Most of you guys listening probably don't know who he is. He really flies under the radar in Arizona, but almost every Jack in the Box and Chick-fil-A and Taco Bell around the nation, he owns the land underneath it and leases it to him. He's a big ground lease guy. He owns a ton of real estate. Super cool guy. He's my mentor, one of my mentors. So his right-hand guy is Andrew. And I pulled Andrew aside. I was auditing their company, which was so cool. Whole story that I can go into that I won't now. But I pulled Andrew aside and said, hey, I really want to learn real estate. Can you help me? And he unfortunately wasn't looking to hire at that time, but he put me in touch with somebody who was a private money lender. And I thought, I really want to get into the development, and my dad's a home builder. I want to learn how to build houses. I want to learn that side of it. He's like, no, trust me, go do the lending side and learn how to underwrite deals. Because if you can value a property, you could be successful in real estate. And I did that for about 2 years with, a guy named Greg Sir. And he was, my real kind of real estate mentor in a way, because he took me under his wing. I mean, I literally knew nothing about real estate. And here's this guy paying me $85,000 a year and gave me an office with a window, which I told him, if I would have known I was getting a window after coming from audit, I would have taken $50,000 a year. And, I underwrote deals all day long. And now it's crazy. Within 6 months of me starting there, the market started to slow down super fast. So that was about 2007 when I started. Well, I rode through 2008. So, I was underwriting, hundreds of deals a week. Just what's the value? Does the deal make sense? And they're big subdivision deals, they're houses, all kinds of real estate. Super, super good experience. And I still remember this day. I had saved up about $40,000, $50,000, not as much as John. And somebody walked in and handed him a pink sheet of paper and said, you're done, shut down. And it was the Department of Financial Institutions, and they shut him down. and he had some lawsuit going on and some issue.
Wow.
And I was out without a job. I mean, his whole business was shut down, right? Now he ended up being okay. Like, I'm not saying bad about him. He wasn't doing anything illegal. He ended up getting back in business and winning that lawsuit with the Department of Financial Institutions. But there was about 6 months there where he couldn't lend money. So this is like September, October of 2009. It's like the worst time in the world to lose your job. Like, who the hell else is going to hire me? So I had $40,000 in the bank. And I remember you said something, Gabe, earlier, like you felt like you're rich with that $40,000. It's funny, your guys' number were very similar. Like $40,000, I made it. Like I literally felt like that. Like I was single. I had just gotten back from a trip from Europe, and I was like, man, I really wish I would have lost my job right before I left Europe. I could have just stayed in Europe for longer. And I for like 2 weeks, I worked out every day. I slept in. Like I really lived life to the fullest at the time. And then I got super bored. I was like, man, I got to do something with my life. And I found a business partner at the time who was doing loan modifications, actually, Gabe. You remember those days?
Yep.
Good old loan mods. And I sat down and said, hey, why don't we do short sales? And we started doing short sales, and we grew a business together, a flipping business. And we started flipping like 80, 100 houses a year really fast within 2 or 3 years. And we really got involved in real estate. Well, what happened was, and this is an important part of my story, I mean, I always had the motto that I would leave more on the table than I'd take in a partnership. And this applies to marriage too. Like you could really only do that for so long before it really starts weighing on you. If the tables are turned too much. And he's a super good guy, but his kids were a little older. You know, they had a lot of basketball, soccer, all kinds of events. He was building a house. I mean, he was spending a ton of time away from the business, and I was grinding in the business still. And on top of that, I had all these other business ideas. And luckily, I married a really good girl who motivated me to end that partnership. I felt so bad. Like I'm such a loyal person. I hated the idea of ending a partnership, right?
You're a people pleaser.
So, what's that, Gabe?
You're a people pleaser.
Well, I enjoy loyalty. I think loyalty is important to me. And, you know, I would never do real estate with my wife on the side. She wanted to go find deals. And I felt like I was cheating on my business partner by doing real estate with her if she found deals. Like just the idea of it, it's not an ethical thing in my mind. Right. So anyway, my wife really pushed me to leave that partnership. And since then, since 2018, when I left, I've started 5 other companies. I own 7 companies now, and I guess 6 other companies, right? I own 7 companies now, and life's good. I work when I want. I work as much or as little as I want. I traveled 120 days last year, which was freaking awesome. And I was going to try to beat it this year, but with everything going on, can't really go anywhere. And yeah, I'm living my best life. Like I felt like I finally gotten to that point. And these are the kind of things on this podcast I want to make sure we talk about. Like, what are those things that I did and that you guys have done to be able to live your best life, whatever that means, right? To not have the stress of how am I going to make that dollar tomorrow? And you know money's still coming in even when you're sleeping.
We can do a whole episode just on like how you acquired those companies and how did you review the financials and all that stuff. I think that'd be super fascinating.
I'm under contract right now on a company for a couple $1 million. So definitely happy to do a little case study on it.
Yeah, that'd be good. And how old was your partner? The one that you ended up in a partnership with? Yeah. Was he older, like in a later stage of life than you were at the time? Or
Same age. He just had kids earlier than I did. So like we owned a boat together and they were using it every week, and our kids were so little, we couldn't really use it. And like, he was just living, he was more content, and that's okay. Like he was living the life that I'm kind of living now, if that makes sense. Yep. It's just as a partner, when one's grinding and the other one wants to kind of slow down and live life, those don't mix very well.
Right. And was he financially further along than you? Sort of, he'd been doing it longer, or it was the same and that just his values at that time in his life were such that he wanted more the lifestyle kind of thing, and you were like, hey man, I got all these ideas, I want to grind, I want to like freaking blow this thing up.
100%. I wanted to grind and do other things. And you know what's funny is right when we broke up, I like the idea of starting over and having to go on appointments again and having to do everything again. And I was by myself with an assistant. Like I didn't bring any of the team with me, right? We kind of split the team a little bit, and he kept the sales guys, I kept the assistant and the accountant. And just the idea of starting over was so great that pain was so great, I wasn't willing to grind anymore to get it. So in a weird way, I started doing these other businesses and I structured them in a way that I didn't have to grind anymore. I didn't have to be in the day-to-day anymore.
So it was a big blessing in disguise.
What's that, Gabe?
Said it was a big blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I feel like success is kind of, I felt the same way when I started getting into commercial real estate, which, as you guys know, is more of a recent thing, like 2018, but it's a very similar dynamic where like I had built something up. I was very much out of kind of the day-to-day of doing the business. And then I had to get back into the day-to-day and be the actual sales rep in the commercial business, following up with leads, doing sales calls, doing all the stuff I hadn't done since I had a corporate sales job, 10 years before. So just that resistance to doing that, can be very difficult to overcome.
We need to ask yourself, right? What's the pain that I'm feeling? And is the reward worth the pain? I mean, every entrepreneur, everybody looking to become an entrepreneur, that's a question you have to start off with. Like I just interviewed a guy the other day. He just left his corporate job. And the idea of going back to the corporate job is so scary to him and such a large pain that he'll stay up. He'll work 23 hours a day if he has to, which he might, right? Just to not have to go back to corporate America.
Absolutely. Yeah. It almost, I think for a lot of people in behavior change, what you don't want, or a lot of times it's what you don't want, has to be so strong that it's going to force you to do all this other crap that you also don't want to do, but you don't want to do that less than this other outcome you really, really, really don't want. And until that emotional pain builds and builds and builds and builds to that point where it's almost unbearable, it's hard oftentimes to really take the actions you need to take until you get to that point where you're like almost like you're ready to break almost.
And sometimes that's more powerful. Like it's more powerful to know what you don't want versus sometimes what you do want, because that, that discontent of that is what drives you to actually make a change, where sometimes, just the motivation or inspiration of something, it could compel you to action, but sometimes it just doesn't, it lacks the teeth that the discontent does when you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
It's interesting you say that, Gabe. So I do some coaching with very select people. Like I really don't like to do it. So don't message me and ask me to be your coach. I don't want to do it. But I'm coaching this guy, right? We're going over some of his goals. And his goal is to like play the guitar and do woodworking all day long and not have to work and have cash flow coming in so he could live that life. But his pain is when he has less than 15,000 in his account, it's like the end of the world for him. And like, I really went through this exercise with him. The idea of living that life was not strong enough to sacrifice to get there. The idea of that pain he felt, of having that pain, was strong enough for him to work harder to get further. Isn't that weird? Like he cared more about the pain than he did the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
What's the saying? There's a saying that says, pain is the greatest catalyst for change, and it's always rings true for me. Like every time in your day, I got, I want to go, like for me, health is a big thing and I like to optimize my health, and I want to go, I want to go see functional medicine doctors once a quarter just to run my labs and just know that I'm on track. And I don't have to do that. Like, you can do it once a year or once every 6 months or whatever. But I want to do it once every quarter. And I've been slacking in the last few months and I haven't gone to it. And then I got sick. And when I got sick, like the discontent of me being sick was like, called the doctor right away. Like, let's go run the labs right now, So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's desire of gain versus fear of loss, right? And there is the human psychology is very much built to be more motivated evolutionarily or whatever, right? For the fear of loss more than we are for the desire for gain. And so, I think it is that way for maybe most of us.
We teach that to salespeople when we do our events too, of that, like how to use that in sales to get what you want,
I agree with that. Well, guys, this has been a really cool episode. I know we didn't even plan on going into some of these subjects, but that subject we just talked about, we'll probably do a whole episode on just that idea. I mean, there's a reason why in religions and, different things, they use the word remember. I think that remember word, and they always talk about remembering the sins of your fathers, and not to get religious on you guys, but just remembering the past, how important it is to remember the past, because it motivates you to not repeat those same problems.
Right.
And if you're listening to the show, there's something that's happened in your life. You lived out of your car, your parents were poor, you had a father who was really mean to you, like something that, creates that motivation inside of you not to live that life anymore and to have a better life. And I promise you, as you guys watch this show, you're going to get to know Jon and Gabe and me, and you're going to relate to one or all of us at different points. And our goal is to motivate you to become an amazing entrepreneur who has the freedom. We want to provide the blueprint for you to go from here to there and wherever that is on your journey. Looking forward to you guys watching more. If you like the show, please like it, share it, and comment. Talk to you later.
Peace.